Hey everyone, Brandon here from Trucksafe. The electronic logging device, or ELD mandate, has now been in effect for about 5 years. And whatever your feelings happen to be about ELDs, they are the way of the world nowadays. That said, the FMCSA recently published a notice suggesting that there may be some major changes on the way for those devices. That's what we're going to break down in this video, so stay tuned. Do us a favor, hit that like and subscribe button below if you find this type of content helpful. Okay, so it's September 2022 when we're making this video, and the FMCSA has just published an Advanced Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, or ANPRM, concerning ELDs. Now, this notice is just a way for federal agencies to notify the public that they're considering implementing or revising some rules and to garner input that could inform that rulemaking. Now, according to its ELD ANPRM, lessons learned by the agency staff, state enforcement personnel, ELD providers, and industry over the last few years can be used to streamline and improve the clarity of the regulatory text in ELD technical specifications and resolve questions that have arisen. According to the notice, the agency is seeking comments in 5 specific areas, which we'll discuss in turn. All right, first up has to do with pre-2000 model year engines. Now, under current rules, vehicles with engines of model year 1999 or older are completely exempt from the ELD requirement. This exemption was originally premised on the idea that certain older engines may not interface with ELDs through an ECM port. But the agency now appears to be changing its tune on this point, explaining in its notice that many vehicles with pre-2000 engines and most vehicles with rebuilt pre-2000 engines have engine control modules, ECMs, installed that could accommodate an ELD. The question it is now asking of the public is whether the agency should reevaluate or modify the applicability of the current ELD regulation for rebuilt or remanufactured CMV engines or glider kits. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion what the public's answer is going to be to this question, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. All right, next up, we're dealing with ELD malfunctions. Now, the current rules set out a process that drivers and carriers must follow in the event the device malfunctions to, number 1, ensure that the driver's time is still tracked, and number 2, that the malfunction is timely corrected. In its notice, the agency explains that Section 395.34 of the safety regulations requires a driver to follow the motor carrier and ELD provider recommendations when a data diagnostic event is logged. Whenever an ELD fails to record a driver's hours, enforcement personnel must be able to review the driver's paper logs. By contrast, when an ELD malfunctions but continues to record the driver's hours accurately, the driver should not switch to paper logs. And so the agency is now asking whether it should amend carrier and driver responsibilities in the regulations to clarify when a driver must switch to paper logs. In other words, are the agency's current regulations clear enough about what drivers and carriers are to do in the event of a malfunction? Okay, so the next topic addressed in the notice is the revocation of certain ELD devices from the FMCSA's certification list. Now, you may or may not know that under the current regulatory scheme, ELD manufacturers don't actually have to get their devices certified by the agency before they offer them to the public. Instead, they merely have to self-certify that their devices meet all of the required technical specifications that are set out in the rules. Now, the FMCSA is posing several questions concerning the process for revoking non-compliant devices from this self-certification list, such as, if an ELD provider goes out of business and fails to self-revoke, should FMCSA be able to immediately remove that device from the registered ELD list? Additionally, should ELD providers be required to confirm their information on an annual basis, and should an ELD provider's ELD be removed from the FMCSA list if it fails to confirm or update its listing on an annual basis? All right, next up, the agency is also contemplating certain revisions to its detailed technical specifications for ELD devices. It asks whether ELD data output files could contain additional data points that aren't currently included, whether the devices should track certain driving activity more more frequently than they currently do, whether to codify in its regulations the yard move exemption it has granted on a temporary basis, whether drivers should be permitted to place themselves in certain exempt statuses, and whether ELDs should automatically change a driver's duty status if he or she powers down without first manually switching the duty status. Now, it's this last one that really caught my attention. I know from working with several carriers and drivers over the years that problems that arise when drivers forget to change their duty status prior to powering down their vehicle. For example, I've seen drivers whose duty status has been left in personal conveyance or on duty not driving for hours on end while they've been on break for a weekend or a holiday, which can cause problems for them when they come back on duty, obviously. So I think the FMCSA's proposal here would be a welcome change. Okay, last but certainly not least, the agency is asking the public to weigh in on whether it should move away from that self-certification process that I mentioned earlier and to a system like Canada's, where the agency itself or its designees certify these devices. This would obviously be a big change, and it's probably making the ELD manufacturers out there pretty nervous, but it would seemingly lead to more accountability among those manufacturers to ensure that their devices do in fact meet the technical standards. All right, that's going to wrap things up. This notice may seem fairly innocuous at first blush, but depending on where the agency takes it after the comment period, we could be in for the first substantial changes to the ELD rules since their implementation 5 years ago. Comments can be filed online at regulations.gov in docket number FMCSA 2022-0078. If you have any questions about this notice or need assistance crafting comments, feel free to reach out to us at Trucksafe.com. For even more in-depth information about hours of service rules and other major aspects of the federal and state safety regulations, be sure to check out our innovative online compliance courses for safety managers and drivers over at TrucksafeAcademy.com. Also, be sure to check out our detailed compliance articles on our website at trucksafe.com and follow us on our various social media pages for the latest highway transportation news and analysis. Thanks for watching.